Okay, I got a copy of the Kahuna Sorcerers of Hawaii, and I was happy to get a copy of this because not only is Morrnah listed, but her mother is listed as well. Her mother's name is Lilia Simeona, and Morrnah is considered a pupil or a student of Lilia's, and her name is spelled maybe more Americanized here in this book, Morna, but it is obvious that it is talking about Morrnah Simeona, the founder of the self identity through Ho'oponopono type of Ho'oponopono. And so I was excited to get this. When I read the section, I think she's only on 3 pages. I was a little bit disappointed. There's an index in the back, and I just skipped ahead. But I do plan on reading the whole book because, like I said, Lilia is in the book. And if I find anything of value about Lilia, well, of course, she's a valuable woman, and then she also birthed Morna. But if I find anything that might interest the readers, then I will, of course, read about Lilia as well. Lilia was, from what I did read, a very strict kahuna. She didn't believe in any watering down whatsoever. Like when Morna would say, you can substitute this herb or this grass for another, Lilia, the mom, her mother got kind of mad and said, you're not doing things the proper way. So I might have read that somewhere else. This might not be in this book. That story might not be in this book. But let's see what's in this book. I did read the section. This has information on the internet, so it's not nothing new, but at least we get the first-hand knowledge. Okay, so I'm going to start at the top of 195. The language used is, I believe, terribly important. For instance, I have experimented with healing prayers in English, saying relatively the same things I might have said in Hawaiian, but the word relatively is the crux. As you know, it is important to translate exactly and literally from Hawaiian to English, and in the translation, the magic is lost. The mana is drained. I believe mana is power. This is, of course, also true of prayers rendered in certain of the other mystic languages: Hebrew, Chinese, East Indian, Latin, etc. And from what I understand, English is kind of a watered down and mixed language. Like we have Germanic words, we have Latin words, Roman words, so on and so forth. And if you take a dictionary from probably 1920 and look up the word want, there's so many definitions. And so the English language is not the best language for potent prayers, but that's a limiting belief. We don't necessarily even need language to pray. We just can pray with our energy. And Morna, she mentioned visualization. So, like, if you can take the thought form or the visual idea, you can use that as a prayer. So, for instance, instead of actually drinking blue solar water, you can imagine drinking blue solar water and it will have the same effect as drinking real, quote unquote, blue solar water. And I've not tried it because I've never made blue solar water, but if you have, I'm curious. Has it worked? Does visualizing versus drinking the water works? That reminds me, now that I'm speaking of visualizing, wasn't there a basketball team, like an all-star championship team that visualized their way to success? I remember reading that somewhere. Going back to the text, other Polynesians never in recorded history attained more than a fraction of our success in either spiritual or herb healing. Herb healing is, of course, 50% prayer too. Interesting. So it's not just taking the herbs, but what you're praying and intending in those herbs. The Hawaiians alone were sprung from the original hermaphroditic tribe of Polynesian healers. They must have indeed been a small and select group. History records that other members of the Polynesian family voyaged all the way to our islands for healing. Kahuna. I have contacted over the years in the southern groups have displayed little knowledge of healing. Moreover, one finds no great tradition of healing in those groups beyond common herbal knowledge. I said kahuna the way I did is because it's italicized in this book. The following is a first-hand account of a great modern kahuna of the order of La'au Ka'ia and her practice. Please forgive me for mispronouncing any names, any Hawaiian names. I did put the Hawaiian guide on my channel. I know that you're supposed to pronounce every single vowel, but I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing the vowels right because there's the American version of vowels and the Hawaiian version of vowels, the pronunciation of vowels. Okay, near the end of October 1971, I wasn't even here yet, I decided to fly down to Honolulu from Oakland to seek the healing services of Morrnah Simeona, the daughter of Lilia, the great kahuna La'au Kahia, who in 1921 had caused my arm to heal overnight after it had been infected for nearly a year and was scheduled to be amputated by the surgeon who had despaired of saving it. And you have to think, we have great medical technology today. This is 2024, and 1921, that's over 100 years ago. And so the technology back then, and even the knowledge of medicine back then is vastly different than it is today. We've come a long way. Okay. At the time of my decision to return to my native islands, I had just emerged from a San Francisco hospital where I had been treated after a third heart attack and a compound hip fracture and was fearful that my health was broken. During the 2 weeks I was undergoing treatment in Morrnah's health spa, I learned through our many talks that, unlike her mother, Lilia, she is of a Christian faith. Lilia, who is now deceased, relied wholly upon her native deities, prayed to them for curative powers with which to heal her patients, and knew all of the traditional rites of pure spiritual healing. Morrnah is a Christian spiritualist, but is not attached to any church. She is a devout believer in Jesus Christ and John the Baptist. At times, I'm sorry, you guys. I just remembered I have been a seeker of truth all my life, which means I have visited many churches. And one time I decided to go to the spiritualist church in the San Francisco Bay Area or in San Francisco, and it was interesting. So the pastor, if that's the right word, or the priest, I don't know, whoever presides over the church, they are actually mediums. Oh my gosh, talk about wild. So they were channeling this Native American, well, I don't know if it was a man or woman, I don't remember, but it was just wild. And like the messages didn't apply to me, but the messages would apply to specific people in the audience. And it was just interesting, mind-boggling. I had a whole mix of emotions after, during and after attending the meeting, and I'm laughing because it's just so funny. This Caucasian woman was channeling a Native American man or woman, and it was, like I said, mind-boggling. And not that you can't. I'm not a. I am speechless because I'm not one to give my body over to different entities or spirits. But it was just, like I said, mind-boggling to have this white woman channel a Native American spirit. And it was almost like it was fake. It kind of just, it was mind-boggling. Let me go on to the book. Okay. At times, she feels that Christ speaks through her. She has her own little spiritual group in Honolulu, and she, being Morrnah, of course, has her own little spiritual group in Honolulu and periodically holds meetings to which a select few are invited. Man, I wish I could be in her presence. Like, I wish I could have lived in Honolulu, or, well, I did live in Honolulu, but of course, that was a couple of years ago, and Morrnah's been gone since 1992. But I wish I would have known her or met her because she just seems like a fascinating woman. Let's see. I guess that's why I'm looking for books with her in them. Uh, Although she is wholly capable of practicing black sorcery, she believes that it is contrary to Christian teachings. And it is, because, I've read the Bible, and the Bible talks about suffer not a witch, I believe is one of the verses. Suffer not a witch to live, and then something about mediums, like don't partake in mediumship and things of that nature. She says, or excuse me, the book says, such powers of, and I'm not going to say that word, are invoked only to exorcise a killing spirit from which the victim of a black sorcerer, or to protect herself from being likewise possessed, writes that she assured me she performed regularly. Okay, so let's see. So she believes that black sorcery is contrary to Christian teachings. Such powers of blank are involved only to exorcise a killing spirit from the victim of a black sorcerer, or to protect herself from being likewise possessed, writes that she assured me she performed regularly. Also, the rites she performs before undertaking to heal a patient of purification to be effective must arise from a psychic wellspring even more available than that of the most powerful black sorcerer. When I received the first several treatments for the back injury, Morrnah needed to enlist the assistance of an associate Kaulea. I did not know that I was then at the point of death. Later word came to me through a mutual friend that Morrnah had said, don't be surprised if you have to take Melville back to California in a coffin. We will do our best to save his life. In my final session with Morrnah, she alone massaged my body 4 hours. When I arose from the operating table and said, I'll write you a check for $40, she laughed and replied, for you, Le'enani, there is no charge. I regard you as a friend, not as a customer. My schedule for tomorrow is so full that I can't get away to the airport to bid you aloha. Will you please accept this, my gifts, instead of fragrant flower leis? The flowers wilt and lose their perfume. My gifts to you are health and life. The next afternoon, flying through the upper spheres back to Oakland, I was comfortable and relaxed. So unlike the flight down, when there was so much pain that every slight movement of my body was nearly insufferable. All this was the handiwork of Hawaii's greatest living Kahuna of the healing arts, who would not accept a nickel from me in compensation. I suddenly remembered a similar gesture her mother made to me. The Haole doctor my dad employed to save my right arm charged him hundreds of dollars more than he could afford in his modern circumstances. Haoli is white. But when he asked Lilia what her fee was, she replied, "There is no charge. God gave me this healing power as a gift. He did not charge me. I cannot charge you because you are a friend." Those old-time Hawaiian healers never stipulated a fee. One gave them what one could afford, and it was graciously accepted. And growing up, I remember something of that nature, like, but I don't remember the specific details. It might have been a psychic. So instead of the psychic charging money, the psychic might have charged a carton of eggs or a gallon of milk, things of that nature. When I reflect on Morrnah's assertion that God gave me this healing power as a gift, it seems to me that she ignored her indebtedness to the old gods and to her mother. Her healing powers are one thing, and her knowledge of how to apply them quite another. According to the many old Hawaiians, the only way one may have the powers and the ability of a La'au kahia, practitioner is to be given them by a kahuna who has decided to quit practicing or who believes they are on the brink of death. Thus, it would seem to be only a matter of suddenly inheriting the role of kahia, and presto, it is mastered. But I am of the opinion that to be a successful healer, one must be a sensitive and also be much more than casually instructed in the arts by an old hand who relinquishes their powers and techniques. So, in the Bible, I believe it was Elijah and Elisha. When Elijah died, he gave a double portion of his mantle to Elisha, and it was like a transference of spirit, a transference of power. And Elijah, the mentee, was more powerful than Elijah, the mentor. Morrnah herself testified that she was taught a great deal by her mother Lilia in her final years, and of course she learned a great deal by observation. Okay, so that is it for these pages. I'm going to flip to the back really quick because I think I saw there was another page where Morrnah was listed. Oh, okay. She is listed on another page, but it's just basically the notes. It says the author is privileged to know the most powerful of the 5 authentic and effective kahuna, La'au kahia, who currently practice their incredible healing arts on the island of Oahu. This woman is known to have accomplished many sensational cures during her long career. She is Morrnah Simeona, the daughter of the late Lilia, whose healing feats have become legendary throughout the islands by 1920. Lilia first came to the author's attention in 1934 when he first met Leilani Melville Jones, a former patient who related the story of his case substantially as it appears here. Early in 1921, when L. Melville Jones was a boy of 12, he fell from the top of a tall coconut tree at Waikiki and broke his right arm at the wrist, elbow, and shoulder. Dr. Blank, it doesn't have a name, then a leading Honolulu surgeon, set his arm and placed it in splints. But for nearly 12 months, the bones refused to knit or to heal. The arm soon stiffened, withered into disuse, and turned black. Bits of separating flesh and dead skin barely covered the bones, which could actually be seen in places that were kept open for drainage. The fingers locked and the elbow would not bend, so that he lost complete control of the arm and could not move it even from the shoulder. There was such an offensive odor from the drainage pus that family members and friends kept their distance. The day came when the doctor told his father that the boy's arm would have to be amputated in order to save his life. It was at this critical juncture that his mother persuaded his skeptical father to send for Lilia, who was a close friend of the family, and although he had always been chary of engaging her service, he had always been chary of engaging her services. Maybe chary means weary. Let's look that up really quick because I've never seen that word before. But going from the context clues, I'm thinking it means weary. Okay, so chary means cautiously or suspiciously reluctant to do something. Let's see. In one of his letters to me in recent years, he described his impressions of the treatment. I had always regarded Lilia with awe because she had the flaming red eyes of a Kahuna Makaula seeress, where she looked at me even with a friendly smile. I always felt as though her sight was penetrating to the very core of my being, which somewhat frightened me. She came up to me with only one glance at the arm, gazed at me for a long moment, and asked, "How would you like to go swimming with me before we have lunch tomorrow?" I laughed at her and replied, "You're nuts if you think I can even move my arm tomorrow, let alone use it to swim." Mother begged me to let Lilia treat the arm, saying that she was one of the last great healers left among our people. Maybe it was Lilia's hypnotic smile that completely dissipated my boyish fears, for I relaxed and began to hope that she could save my arm from amputation. I told Lilia to go ahead and lick it over. After she removed the bandage and made a careful examination of my arm, the healing priestess After she removed the bandage and made a careful examination of my arm, the healing priestess announced that she would start the treatment right then in our yard, if I assured her that I had absolute faith in her powers and I would agree to follow her instructions in every detail. These terms I assented to, and we repaired to the backyard. The whole process was too lengthy to record here, and some of it I shall never reveal. First, Lilia fell into a trance-like state and offered prayers for her own purification. Then I was sent for water from the nearby sea. After the water was heated, I was required to soak my arm in it while she did a great deal of chanting and sprinkling about of various things. Finally, the arm was bound up in a poultice of herbs. Suffice it to say, when we lunched together at noontime of the next day, I used my knife and fork with ease and swam in my usual style a little later on with little discomfort. By the 9th day after the knitting of the bones, the flesh and skin had returned completely to normal, so I picked up my surfboard of heavy Hawaiian mahogany, koa wood, and swam out to ride the high queen surf, which starts on a reef some distance off Waikiki Beach. As I emerged from the water near the old Outrigger Club pergola and threw my board onto my shoulder in a seemingly effortless movement, I was hailed by my Haole doctor, who had come down. Howley, sorry, I'm reading it, but in my mind I know it's pronounced Howley. Doctor, who had come down for an afternoon swim. That meeting with the doctor, who had believed there was no alternative to depriving me of my good right arm, was one of the most dramatic incidents of my lifetime. When he got over his state of shock and disbelief, he plied me with questions about the treatment I had received from Lilia. Born in Hawaii, the grandson of a medical missionary, in his long practice he had seen more than a score of, to him, inexplicable healings by practitioners of Kahuna La'au Kahia, as had his grandfather. He vainly sought to learn the secrets of medical arts and was beginning to think that there was more to it all than the quackery of a people who had reverted to heathen practices after it was assumed they had long been civilized by the Boston Zealots. Not long after this doctor's death in 1949, L. M. Jones met his widow aboard a steamship bound for the Far East. She confided to him that his own case was the most baffling her late husband had ever confronted. The deep despondency he suffered from at the time of his death was, by the doctor's own statement, attributable to his lifelong failure to find the key to La'au-Kahia healing. Her trip through China and India was to be a fulfillment of a promise she made to the doctor that she would seek for ancient origins of Kahuna lore in Asian lands. L. M. Jones added this interesting sequela to the healing of his arm in a letter. Sequela is sequel. Let me look and see when this book was written, because some of these words I don't know and never seen before. Let's see. Whoa. Okay, so this book was written in 1979, and that's the first edition, but we are going back like to 1920s, stories of 1920s and 1949. Very fascinating. This book is like a history of Kahuna healing. I don't think I went through the title of this book. This book is called Kahuna Sorcerers. Let me get to the page. This book is falling apart, you guys. Okay, this book is called The Kahuna Sorcerers of Hawaii, Past and Present, and it's written by Julius Rodman. And it has that old book dusty smell too. Okay. Okay, so we're talking about the sequel to his healing of his arm, L. M. Jones, and L. M. What stands for Leonani, and then I forgot what the M stands for, and then Jones. Okay. Lilia, as a result of her saving my life, became for me a parental figure I grew to love and admire. One day she spoke of teaching me the art of spiritual healing, in these words that have never faded from my memory. I can tell by the aura you radiate that you are ready to be taught, and when the pupil is ready, the teacher will appear. I can make you the greatest Kahuna La'au-Kahia of the century if you will let me teach you, because you're ready to receive and fully comprehend that which is purely spiritual. Lilia's words were beyond the grasp of my child mind, but the regimen of training she described was clear enough. It meant I would have to travel in the wilds with her, living on the bounty of nature, while she taught me to recognize the hundreds of medicinal herbs and how to concoct them into medicines, and imparted to me the techniques of invoking healing angels to provide their divine aid in practicing pure spiritual healing. Wow, can you imagine being offered that? I turned down Lilia's offer partly because it frightened me, but mostly for purely selfish reasons. We lived a block from the beach in a comfortable home and wanted for nothing, meaning we lacked for nothing. And now that my arm was cured, I could share the sports I loved, swimming and surfing, every day with my many friends in the neighborhood. I was not about to give up such a pleasant life to go into a lonely wilderness and live on plant foods while being taught the exacting disciplines of an ancient science. My parents were greatly disappointed by my decision not to give up a way of life, a pleasant way of life, to endure the harrowing period of apprenticeship in the rainforest through which I could perpetuate a dying Kahuna art. But in years to come, I was bitterly to regret being so stubborn and heedless as a child, when I eagerly sought knowledge of the gods of Hawaii, their roles, and their relationships with each other, with mankind, and with nature. Now, as my life draws to a close, I need only complete a written record of all this lore, which Lilia would have freely imparted to me, and which I have at last gained through my own researches. With this record finished, my mission on earth would be fulfilled. I was told by a great spiritualist years ago, if you fail, you will have failed your mission on earth, and all that has been given you would be taken away, and you would be sent back to the bottom of the class to learn all your lessons from the very beginning. Okay, that's it. So what do you think? Are you on your mission? Do you even know what your mission is? Are you on purpose? Okay. Um, I just heard it's okay if you don't know what your mission is. If you're doing Ho'oponopono, you're already checking in with divinity, and as you're checking in with divinity, divinity will guide your steps. Okay. Oh, and I also just heard you don't have to know your full complete mission. Divinity will guide you step by step. Okay, talk to you later. I hope you're having a wonderful day or evening wherever you're at in the world. Bye.